Joining me in our Washington studio is John Tamny, editor of Real Clear Markets and a columnist with Forbes magazine. John, welcome to our program.
Thanks for having me.
Let's try to understand what really happened at the World Trade Organization with this meeting today. From what we understand, U.S. rejected the request for the establishment of a dispute panel to discuss their complaints, the Europeans' complaints, the Chinese, the Canadians, on tariffs that involve steel and aluminum. So can the United States tell the WTO what they can and what they can't discuss when it's many countries that have an issue with?
I think that is the assumption from the United States, is that there are rules for the rest of you, and then there are U.S. rules that are totally exclusive to us. What's dangerous, obviously, about this is that the United States is not talking about free trade. Who is going to? And what scares me about this is the assumption coming from the United States is that somehow we are being harmed by this opening of global trade. No. The fact that the U.S. has among the lowest tariffs in the world is why it's one of the most prosperous countries on earth. To go in the other direction, to threaten higher tariffs, is for the U.S. basically to take a gun and shoot at its best companies. If we're not taking in the world's plenty, we're also not selling around the world.
Well, President Trump, of course, has threatened to withdraw from the World Trade Organization if it doesn't, in his words, shape up. He claims the U.S. hasn't been treated fairly by the WTO.
And Trump gets that backwards. Let's never forget, he talks about negotiating trade deals. The United States has the ultimate trade deal in that the average tariff on foreign goods is 1.4%. That means our businesses are stronger because they're fully exposed to market signals around the world. It also means the workers who live in the U.S. get a raise every single day simply because they're not paying taxes on foreign goods. For Trump to say that the rest of the world is better off for having higher tariffs is for him to once again get it backwards. We are a strong economy in the U.S. precisely because we have low tariffs. Let's keep them that way.
Well, his supporters would argue that he does have some very legitimate concerns when it comes to the trade imbalance with China, issues of intellectual property theft. So, John, if not tariffs, what should the United States be doing? How should the U.S. approach be to try to resolve this crisis?
The U.S. approach should be that we're going to lead. We are going to be the country that goes for zero tariffs because that improves our companies the most and it improves every single individual. The fact that the Chinese are increasingly productive means that every single day the Americans get a raise thanks to this boom in productivity overseas. The notion of intellectual property is quite a bit of a myth. Let's remember that someone could look at Steven Spielberg for days and days, look through all his notes. They could still never make a Steven Spielberg film because they don't have the talent. When we talk about IP, we insult our most talented people. As far as trade imbalances, there's no such thing. I run a trade surplus with my employers. I run a trade deficit with the individuals I buy from. Trade deficits are my reward for being productive. They're not a sign of the U.S. losing.
How do you think this is all going to play out next Tuesday during midterm elections? A lot of the people who support Trump's policies are farmers who are being hurt by these tariffs and the counter tariffs by China.
It's a little bit unsettling. I thought if you'd asked me a couple of weeks ago, I would have said to you the reality is that stock markets are much more powerful than Donald Trump or any world leader. Ultimately, we're going to pull back. But I don't think Vice President Pence's speech 3 weeks ago was some coincidence in which he came out and said more tariffs on the way. Is it any surprise that U.S. stock markets have corrected and have corrected substantially ever since that speech, basically saying that the U.S. is going to injure itself more by injuring China, by putting up tariffs, and also limiting more Chinese investment in the United States? Our companies are desperate for liquidity. Basically, the U.S. is saying we're going to harm them too.
We'll have to leave it there. John Tamny, thank you so much.